everyone joined up. We started spreading new inspiration all over in any way we could, always taking care not to be imposing. No one was to be preached to. It was sufficient to talk to people who were interested, and when it was done outside, it didn't take long, and more people joined in and listened. We started spreading love in the pedestrian areas and all over together with those that wanted to, by demonstratively kissing and hugging each other, being human monuments for love, calm, and peace. It was a real phenomenon. It started as a flash mob, which became increasingly popular and didn't stop. It was a sort of job. We started taking the time to hug each other for minutes at a time, to greet each other and kiss and cuddle, because it was just so pleasant and didn't cost a cent. It charged us with energy, and you could see the energy being transferred to the surroundings. No one had any reason to be jealous. Since we were consciously following our internal impulses, we all saw the growing number of synchronicities, and our interest showed us with whom we could do such things. We could see it in the look of another, and our senses burnt through. We all know the feeling of meeting someone where their appearance takes our breath away. It's a great hindrance when we can't follow our impulses because we're not allowed to for whatever reason. The wife won't be impressed, or because of all the people around you. When we realized how impeding the desire for togetherness was as portrayed by Hollywood romances, when instead we could have it here and now every day. We saw how these expectations weren't the best for us, so we freed ourselves mutually. It didn't take long before we also freed ourselves sexually. We started allowing each other the freedom to do anything, especially those we loved the most, so that the people got what they needed to be happy, so no one felt alone anymore, as there was always someone there for you. It didn't change our feelings for each other. We just started using our possibilities. It started with kissing. Kissing is contagious, just like yawning is. When you allow yourself to do it wherever there is a chance, and we just did it as no one could really stop us, it had the corresponding effect. The best part about it was that everyone had the feeling that something was changing because we were changing it. It was our story, and we were writing it with all that we thought, said, or did. Things changed, and the changes endured. I was there, and it was a great time, he finishes, eyes sparkling. I still remember walking my dog in the city at night and writing okeytalk.com on every wall and lamppost. I was one of many. I was 19 back then, and in a truth movement. I had a blog about 9/11, but after a while, the vibe of the others started pulling me down. I joined this movement in September 2015, and a few weeks later, my life changed. I suddenly knew what to do. I spread the message and sent friends the okeytalk.com link, inviting them to have a listen. And since so many of us did, more and more also started listening and didn't leave either. Many started to give talks themselves, made videos and radio shows, and spoke about what they were thinking. The result was that TV programs didn't show us what we wanted to see, but here we could listen to what we wanted to hear. We started to think out loud and use our head consoles. We spoke to everyone around us that was interested, and more became interested. A whole generation of people who were waiting in front of their screens for the starting gun stood up and started speaking. Some were shy, some were emotional, but they all spoke. That caused a big murmuring. It was almost scary. It sounded like the humming of bees, and it spread out over the whole planet. You could hear it wherever there were people around, people that were now speaking to each other and listening to what the other had to say. Sometimes 2 or 3 were speaking at the same time, but we realized that the words which were important for ourselves would be the ones that would be heard, regardless of who was speaking them. The dogmatism disappeared, and there were no more arguments or conflicts. The great mumbling lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and was only the tip of the iceberg, which was the result of what a few people started previously, opening themselves up and telling the world via webcam what they were really thinking. Then everyone was talking, as if in trance. Ears were opening, and we started listening. 3 days and 3 nights. The murmuring silenced all other noise on earth. The machines were quiet. The loudmouths and stress bringers, the traffic and weapons, TV and radio, the politicians were silent. And for many, the spirit too. After that, everything was different. There were no material changes. Everything lay as it was before. But there was a change. We had a new base of communication, a simple and effective one. We could speak to each other. Only then did we realize what the difference was. That alone changed the world noticeably. After that, nothing was the same again. We could concentrate on the old problems and their solutions in a different way. It took a while to get used to it, and there the radio shows helped us again. We could train a new form of communication. Our way of speaking also changed bit by bit. The words were mostly the same, but we started to use language in a completely different way. Can you follow? That was the first noticeable change that we felt. One man became quite interesting for a brief time as he started an experiment about appreciation. Bodo Delitz, co-author of the Mary book. He had gathered thousands of people worldwide together. Every Sunday at 1950, irrespective of where they were, they would meet in a mental room in the Matrix to spend time working on their ability to appreciate. In the lives of the people, there was seemingly always more to appreciate. That was Onmind Gaming. And the people were using it for months on end without even realizing it. Bodo Delitz, I was just thinking of him. Of course, yes. I was also participating. Not every week, but my cell phone was set for Sundays 2040. That's incredible, Nathan's mind thinks with excitement. However, Nathan continues calmly. Not interesting. Not relevant. Carry on listening. Nathan's mind is talking in 2 different tones to itself. The calm one throttles the hectic one, and so mojo can continue. The 2 groups connected, the appreciators and the on-mind gamers. Then the first group also started sharing their thoughts on Okie with anyone that was interested. Thousands of people heard about the things all around them that could be appreciated. They just didn't have the right perception to be able to do so. Now they got the download, and something unbelievable happened. Suddenly, you only met relaxed and happy people on the street. It was like carnival time, just without the alcohol. The people were tipsy, but not drunk. More like an LSD trip, in my opinion. At least that's how I felt. Weeks and months passed and it didn't stop. Mid-2016, there was an Okitok festival close to Vienna in the middle of Austria. Whole hordes of people came from all over the world. There was no lineup, no planning, and no secret people in charge. There were no entrance fees. Everyone brought what they needed and took their rubbish with them again. That has never happened before. It reminded me of a rainbow gathering, but everyone was not only the rainbow family, but every type of person from every walk of life, all equals. It was anarchy, the opposite of hierarchy. Here we found that anarchy didn't have the least to do with chaos. Things here could freely develop. We were led to believe a load of rubbish back then, he says with a cheeky smile. Understood, says Nathan's mind, and I decide that's what it should say. The talk wasn't being interpreted, but instead the jibe was an invitation to interact. If we were on a stage, it would have been Nathan's cue. Through my feelings, Nathan gets an impulse to say something, and he says the freshest thing in his mind. Understood. We were led to believe a load of rubbish. Mojo nods in acknowledgement. Make sure that you do it when you return to your time. The Okitok festival was a flash, the idea ingenious. There were no bands booked, but since we had the chance to meet several of them that we knew from the internet personally, we all went there, and we were our own stars. The rules were simple. Maximum 2 weeks, then we must leave without a trace. That was the entrance fee. On the first say, hundreds of cars, caravans, trucks, tractors, hay, and all sorts of things loaded arrived. On the third day, there were a few thousand, and small huts, tents, and houses popped up all over, not randomly, but organized so that there was space around you, with paths and streets between them all. In the evenings, we all sat around a huge fire. Imagine that. Thousands of people sitting in a circle with a fire in the middle. You could hear drums, guitars, bagpipes, and didgeridoos. Lots were singing and dancing in the middle of the circle. Suddenly, the tone stayed constant, and everyone started to hum along. No one gave a signal. Everyone just stopped drumming, and you could only hear singing in the same tone, which got louder and louder. Everyone sang along, you too, and the song became a scream, not aggressive or hectic, more like an adult bear would, just not as bearish, if you know what I mean, sort of like a whooah. The drums suddenly started beating again, and everyone jumped up, laughing and cheering, and they all started to dance. All around, the people were hugging and kissing. 2 days later, a big truck from a stage company arrived. The boss asked with a wink if he could store his stage here for a while. He and his team would be here and would help if needed. Then it was a go. I'll make it brief. Everyone pulled out their phones and webcams and invited bands that they knew here. The first 3 concerts happened that night. The bands were crap, but the atmosphere was fantastic. Then it took off. At the start of week 2, Nina Hagen was on stage, and when videos of the first concert got out, while it was still on, thousands and tens of thousands came streaming there, even some well-known bands. By the end of the week, it had grown to 7 big stages, Each band could register themselves, and the public voted as to who would play next. Whichever band got the most votes for a time slot got to play. There were also lots of recitals on smaller stages and tents all around. When the space got tight, there was a vote held there too. Democracy in the anarchy camp. By the end of the second week, there were some 1.5 million people, if not 2 there. We could only guess. A hell of a lot of people who demonstrated that they could look after themselves and have a lot of fun together. It was a gigantic peace demonstration, not for or against something, but to show how we can live as equals with each other. The platform that organized it back then was crnaPlandemic, as it offered everything needed to find a consensus about problems, which meant that everyone's interests were included. Everyone had an equal chance and a right to say what they were thinking, and everyone could constructively participate as all suggestions got the chance to be regarded. It was a vote based on the SC principle, systematic consensus. Today, almost everyone has an SC account, but there are also many that manage without it, and some hardly use theirs anymore. When something has to be sorted out, the whole world can potentially help you. It's the same as Facebook was back then. Everyone could simply add their opinion to the matter, share their thoughts, and get feedback. Today, you can see us doing the same thing, just in a different way, constructively, and in consensus. Through the Okie Festival and the massive other gatherings that followed all over the world, anyone could contribute to solutions and get help on their own by getting an account at crnaPlandemic.eu. It became obvious how many quick and individual solutions came from the platform. It didn't take long before we overrode the political system. It didn't make sense to anybody anymore. Even the politicians were speechless over the logic of the phenomenon, which was happening in front of our eyes through us. We stood up and began to sort out our own problems between us. We were tired of waiting on others who did nothing but talk while nothing changed. When the first politicians set up their SC accounts, politics simply disappeared. A coup wasn't necessary, no uprising or emotional speeches, and no funeral celebration. It simply disappeared, as no one was interested anymore, without a peep. Like a flower in the forest, it died and rotted, and no one noticed. Something else had our interest now. Near, our earth, lay at our feet, and from there, lasting peace spread out into the world. Billions followed the spectacle online, and that was the first big Onmind meeting. So many Onmind contacts in one room in the Matrix, millions of us. In the cities and other places around Earth, masses of people got together and spread the festival over the planet. It had many names and became an institution. To today, we still gather up and then go our separate ways freely. We're always connected. No one is alone. Like a flock of birds, we cross our paths like a dance, just like you and I did today. Every cell of the organism is following its own interest, and it becomes a fluid movement that connects us all. At times, we are further apart, other times close together, but nothing is ever permanent, and we are always free. There is no reason for jealousy, as each one of us can care for himself. No one is busy deceiving or cheating another, as we've all understood that it's not good for us and it only works against us. The change was a logical result of us all being able to speak our minds, and like a game on a console, we could all train together with the absolute safety of knowing that nothing bad can happen. It really knocked me off my feet back then. My friend, I can only recommend that you go there. There were many that kicked themselves afterwards, as there was never another Okitok festival, because there was no need for one. On the last day, all the people showed that in spite of the masses, they could leave the area clean and tidy. There were lots of marks, but not a piece of litter left over, and the marks were gone in a few months. The people didn't just leave. They took with them an open and heart-filled spirit that defined the festival. They had shared many new connections, inspirations, and experiences with others, and no one wanted to wait another year for it to happen again. It didn't matter where they went afterwards, and many didn't return to where they came from. They took friends and a lust for life with them, a feeling of connectedness and unconditional love. They spread it wherever they landed, an army of appreciative Onmind gamers on the last march towards freedom, by simply living. And that's why it really asserted itself. World peace? Yes, you could say. Would you like a few beginner's tips about online gaming? Of course. That's why I'm here.